Welcome back to Petty Astrology. I'm your host, Kaycee Felton-Lui, back at you with another petty episode. I don't know about you, but that eclipse energy was quite a lot, and at the moment this episode comes out, we are still very much in the wake of it all. And if you're anything like me, you may find yourself in a bit of a transition period. It may be that this energy brought up places where you owe yourself a little more than you've been giving yourself. Maybe there's more you want to do, more you want to be. Maybe it's a matter of getting out of your own way. I've been very much in that place myself. Been a lot more tired. I've been processing a lot of big feelings, as is typical with eclipse energy, especially in the sign of Aries. It's a sensitive sign, as we talk about later in this podcast. But in the couple weeks leading up to this eclipse, which was in my 10th house, I made some big decisions for myself. I made a pretty big investment in myself. And not only was it a good chunk of change that, I don't necessarily have right now, but there's a lot more I want to do with this podcast and with astrology in general. And so I had to have a conversation with myself. I knew that at some point in starting this podcast, that eventually, if it did well enough, I would need to upgrade my setup. And it was during this 2-week period where it really hit me like, you know what? It's time. And leveling up, even if you know it's what you need to do, can be a very scary thing, because not only are you sometimes putting money and time and other resources on the line, but you're admitting to yourself and maybe others that there's more you want to do. And as humans, we're pretty risk averse in general. We like our comfort, we like our stability, our routine on a certain level. We do not tend to like failure or embarrassing ourselves, and I am certainly in that category. But I was really getting this feeling like nobody's coming to save you. Nobody can invest in you the way that you can invest in yourself. And I was like, this is my job now, I am primarily self-employed at this point in my life. It's a lot of pressure, especially, in this economy. But I was like, I know that this is what I'm meant to do. And again, this eclipse was in my 10th house. The 10th house is often associated with our careers. And it really isn't about career. It's about our calling. Callings are lifelong things. It's like a vocation. It's deeper than a day job. Day jobs are not 10th house matters. And I know how to have a day job or two. But a calling, that's a little different. That feels bigger to me. It feels more risky because I'm invested on a level that I'm not with a day job. I'm not just clocking into this podcast. I'm not just putting stuff up about astrology to make ends meet. I talked about before, I'm a pretty private person. I'm not typically the one with the mic. But we are at a period in time where we all need to be assessing our skills. And this Aries eclipse was a really good moment for us to do that reflecting. But if we want things to get better, those of us with skills and abilities and that are in touch with what we're called to do in this life, we really need to heed that call. We need to put aside the fear, the doubt, the apprehension, I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know where this is going to lead. And what if it doesn't work out the way that I thought it would? And what if that money is not a good investment? What if I don't make a good return on it? And some of those things might even be true. But if we feel strongly about something and we don't even back ourselves on an energetic level, we're not really sending out signals to the universe that we really want to succeed, are we? So, as is often the case, we have to meet the universe halfway. We have to be clear about our intentions. We gotta go for it. Sometimes we gotta just do it. And when I tell this stuff to my clients, people that listen to this podcast, I'm always talking to myself just as much as I am anybody else. I know it's not easy, but if we want to move forward, we have to use the skills, abilities, and talents that we have at our disposal. And our desires, our passions, the things that light us up, those are guideposts. Those are things that we need to pay attention to. We've been trained culturally, socially, to ignore those things, to trivialize them. No, it's not important that you like doing that thing. It doesn't make you money. So who cares? Our lives are really not about making money, despite what we've been taught. We are not here to fill our bosses' bank accounts and give them a good life, a better life. And certainly not at our own expense. So we have to start implementing that. We have to start practicing that and living it as if it is the truth, because it is. And the thing about it is I think when sometimes you say things like this, people hear, oh, you're just giving people a pass to be selfish and focus on themselves. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't have control over anyone but myself. We are kind of here to live the life that we're living. We can't make other people bend to our will. And I'm not sure that we should want to. And the thing about it is yeah, we are here to live a life that is satisfying to us, that is personal to us. And so is everyone else. So is everyone else. And right now, we have multiple genocides happening in the world, a lot of other disruption and injustice. Those people deserve to be happy, to live healthy, fruitful lives just like we do. It's not just Americans that deserve to have nice things, to live comfortably, because we do so at the expense of the developing world. And I think at this moment that we are in right now, as we kind of practice this Pluto and Aquarius energy, I think that we are coming to a point where American comfort, Western comfort at the expense of the global South is coming to an end. People are waking up to the reality of what their comfort costs. And that's not to say that we need to be miserable. We need to suffer. But what makes us think that other people's suffering, other people's labor to mine the materials that go in our electronics so that we can live a little bit better, so we can have more shit, it's not sustainable. It's not compassionate. It's not loving. It's not spiritual. It's bullshit. But I believe that when we love ourselves, when we accept ourselves, when we honor the things that we care about, the things that we are passionate about, the morality that we have, when we listen to that, we listen to our sensitivity, it can allow us to understand that other people have those same abilities, needs, desires, maybe in different ways, maybe in different contexts. But no one individual is better than other people. And so I really believe that by honoring ourselves, by respecting ourselves in a very deep way, loving ourselves in a very deep way, making space to be who we are, that allows us to do the same for other people. It doesn't have to be selfish to love yourself, to play the part that you came here to play. But it really starts with knowing who you are, knowing what your perspective is on the state of the world, and knowing that you have a desire to be a part of the solution, that your skills, your perspective, your life experience, those are not things that can be substituted. You are the only you that is. And we need you. We need all of you. We need all of us to be owning our piece of the pie, to own our little corner of this collective experience that we are having called life. So as we process this Aries eclipse energy and we come to the end of this Aries season, I want you to really own who you are. Don't be the reason that you don't do something. Because if anybody should be backing you, should be investing in you, it should be you. At every turn in this culture, we are told that we are not important enough, we are not good enough, we're not relevant enough. Those are all stories that keep us small, that keep us in our place, that keep us easier to control and confine and limit. It's not helping you, and it's not helping the collective for you to play it small. I want to read you something about Aries energy, and it is by an artist named Ophelia Mandara. This is how she describes Aries energy. I am the first spark of light, springing to life through the nourishment of darkness. My wreath of powerful flames is the essence of spiritual warriorship, the leap of the great initiator, the forger of new paths, My boldness is the flavor of growth through unabashed confrontation and gives rise to the inventive activation of willpower and the willingness to act. There's nothing braver than being who you are, being authentic to yourself. Be the spark, be willing to act. There are things in life that I regret, but I have never regretted being true to who I am. Not for one moment. And my hope is that if you don't feel that way now, you'll be able to look back at this moment and say, I'm so glad that I bet on me. Today on the podcast, I have the entire Petty Astrology crew on to talk about Aries and Libra energy as we continue our sister sign series. After that, I'll give you a heads up on the astrology of the upcoming week and how you can take advantage of it. We got the whole gang of astrologers here today. Like, this is something that I have been manifesting for some time, to get all three of my astrology buddies on the same podcast. So we did it. We did it, Joe. We've got Jennifer Russell here, Mackenzie Wollenzine, and Kathy Sato.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. We're here to talk about Aries energy and Libra energy. This is a continuation of our polarity series. So if you haven't already listened to the Virgo Pisces episode, that is already out. You can already go listen to that. Welcome, guys. We have some exciting news. We have Jen putting out a podcast as well that features this very same group of people. Jen, how does it feel to know that your very first episode of the podcast, you were able to get all four of us on the same recording together?
Magic.
And I am just now able to do that. Do you feel superior? Because I think you should.
I got so many special guests.
Tell us about the podcast. What is your vision for it?
So it's Astro Fight Club. It's just us basically talking about astrology and, what's going on online, just kind of roasting some bad astrology takes, hanging out like we normally do. So if you want to be a part of our group conversation in the way that we typically have them, it'll be a fun podcast for you to see our
Yeah.
less serious side.
It's definitely our finest yapping, I would say. We're just like shooting the shit. It's lovely. We talk about astrology, and we'd love to keep you company. So, by the time that you are hearing this episode, the very first episode of your podcast will be out. Isn't that right?
Yes. I'll give you the link to it so you can just click in if you want more.
That'll be in the show
Yeah, if you
notes.
want more of us, us four specifically talking about astrology.
Excellent. Yeah, we talked about some of the eclipse astrology fear mongering that was going on, and
We kind of talked about how we met and how we studied astrology, and then we did some roasting of some bad Facebook astrology too. It's always a fun time.
it's a fire episode, so I'm excited for people to hear it. So, we're going to start, of course, with Aries energy, because Aries is the first sign in the zodiac and it really does want to be first. So, it's kind of perfect. And we're doing this in celebration of Aries season. It is Aries season as we record this. There is a shitload of energy in Aries right now. And boy, we are feeling it. So, Aries is, of course, a fire sign. It is also a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are the starters of the zodiac. And like I said, Aries is the very first sign in the zodiac. We will talk more about that. And it is typically symbolized by the ram. So if you look at the astrological symbol for Aries, you'll notice that it actually looks like a ram's head. And it is, of course, ruled by the planet Mars. It's a very active sign because Mars is very active energy. And also, if you are looking at an astrology chart, it is typically associated with the first house in an astrology chart. And it also rules the head and face in astrology. So that's good to know as well. So, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you guys about Aries energy?
They're just like going after what they want. I feel like that's the big thing when I think about Aries is they grab life by the balls. or wherever you have Aries in your chart, that's kind of like an area of life where you just got to go for it. Yeah, and you don't have to ask anybody for permission. You don't have to, the only authority is yourself. Like with Aries, it is self-focused, but not necessarily selfish. Like those things are very different, but I feel like sometimes they can get confused when we talk about this energy being they're not necessarily malicious, but they are about themselves and they're very like about their energy and what they're doing, and that's really cool. They're very like innocent in a way. It's like a childlike. They're not causing problems for you on purpose. It's just that they're living their life and they're not really thinking about that.
Yeah, it's very self-directed energy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that there's a directness to Aries energy. It kind of tends to get to the point or to get to its point. And I think that for some reason, culturally, that tends to rub people the wrong way in certain contexts. And so I think that's where we get into some of those like selfish stereotypes. I'm sure we'll get into that too. What about you guys? What comes to mind when you think of Aries energy?
It's a really powerful, passionate energy. It's strong.
Yeah, I think it's a really artistic.
Yeah, and it's quick too. It's like a punch to the gut almost, you know? Like it's
Mhm.
quick and then it's over.
Yeah, it definitely has an impulsive quality to it. So if something makes sense to
Mhm.
an Aries, I think that they have a tendency to go for it without too much hesitation.
Mhm.
If the thing that they're looking at doing is kind of in alignment with who they are, if it's authentic to them, there really is no need for a barrier from the Aries perspective. I also think about the youthful quality of Aries energy. Like I associate it with youth very much. And in terms of like how we think about it, it's like when we are young, I think that's when we tend to be the most self-directed in a certain way because we're still like processing the experience that we're having here as human beings and figuring out what we are in relationship to other people. And so, like, I feel like kids don't really sit and think about, like, who am I? They just do. They just do and see what works out. And sometimes when they do, it's like, oh, I actually don't like this. You learn a lot, I think, from trying things, especially as like a little one, and I think that that is something that is a really beautiful aspect of Aries energy because I think we are often so afraid to try things and fail or not want to continue doing it, and there can be all this worry about like, is this right for me or is it not? And I feel like Aries energy in that sense is like not afraid to just go for something, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and the next thing will make itself known and then you move to that thing.
I definitely associate like Aries with bravery. And I think like all of those qualities that you guys have already said, like it's almost like bravery is like the underlying current. And like I know we all know like the Aries glyph, it's like the plant sprouting out of the ground, or like I think a geyser or whatever else people associate it with, but it's kind of also like, the cracking of that seed. And so it's kind of like, it takes bravery to kind of break out of your comfort zone or, break out of that seed or come out of the womb, that takes a lot of bravery for the soul to do that. And I think that's kind of like, the more esoteric side. But yeah, definitely bravery is what I associate Aries energy with, and just like going for it. They're not known for overthinking. They just kind of they do it and then they're like, "Oh wow, like that was kind of not stupid, but like, they don't think about those things. They don't think about like what could potentially happen. They just go for it."
Absolutely. I think when you were talking about that, it brought to mind when you're driving somewhere and you have the GPS on and you go in a direction that maybe you weren't supposed to go in, and you're like, oh, actually, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. It just reroutes, right? Like it just, and I feel like Aries are really good with that. They can just kind of, reroute as needed. It's like, I didn't end up needing to be here after all. So I'm rerouting, I'm
Hmm.
rerouting. And yeah, it is courageous to kind of just like go with whatever you are feeling and be experimental about
Hmm.
it. And I also think of Aries energy as very pioneering in that sense. And like that goes with the bravery aspect of it, not needing somebody else to lead the way or tell you what to do or how to be, and really like kind of feeling and looking more inward for that kind of information. And in that sense too, I feel like Aries is also, it is the start of the zodiac. So the astrological new year that we just had very recently, it is always a time of new beginnings. And so I feel like Aries energy isn't really afraid of that beginning part, that so many of us are afraid of. Like, we're afraid to start something new. We're afraid to try something and not be good at it, or it not be right for us, or fail, whatever those fears are. I think that Aries energy tends to be fearless in the sense that even if the fear is still there, it's not enough to stop somebody with that energy from doing the thing that they want to do. And I feel like that's something that all of us really benefit from embracing in some aspect of our lives. I feel like we tend to be very contained or socialized, especially if we're socialized as women, to be very, contained and very careful. And, what if something bad happens? And I feel like genetically that's also playing a role. Like, you know, risk maybe doesn't pay off for everybody. And so a lot of us are cultured to not be big risk takers, right? Because there are consequences to taking risks. But at the same time, it's like no risk, no reward, right? And in that sense, I think that I've noticed a lot of people that I know that are artists have strong Aries energy in their charts. And I think that's part of it. Is like, well, what if the, painting that I do sucks? So I'm never going to start it. It's like, well, you have to kind of set that aside or not let that stop you from doing things that you're drawn to do, or else you kind of lose out on life. So I do think it's a very creative energy. And I think because of the authenticity, you often see creativity that you don't see elsewhere, because people with strong Aries energy can be very self-directed and really focused on their own perspective. And on that note, like some of the stereotypes I think with Aries energy is that it is like selfish in a way. And, I have thoughts about that because on one hand, it's like we can only control ourselves, and so it's like, why are we shaming people for being focused on the things that they want and desire and feel drawn to do, I think that we can kind of expect people to like compromise themselves in certain ways.
And how do you define selfish, though? In that way, it would be like a negative context, whereas it's your life to live, you know, and only you can draw those boundaries with other people. Aries rules the first house, and that's all about the self, not these other people. So if you don't worry about yourself, who will? You have to take care of yourself. So I think it's important to have some strong boundaries. And I think Aries placements can excel with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Says the one person here with a Aries personal placement.
Yeah, my Mars.
Yeah, I feel like Aries energy, they have a very good sense of like where they begin and where other people end, of knowing like how self-contained having that energy can be. They can be their own cheerleader. They're not really worried about what other people are doing or thinking. If it's something they're wanting to do, it's just going to get done. And then if people don't like it, they're like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm on to the next thing. You guys can talk about that. And they're already doing something else. And like through experimenting and just doing what they want, they kind of figure out, like, okay, I like doing this. I didn't really like doing that. So, moving forward, maybe I won't try that again. But then you know yourself better for having tried and maybe failed or not have done as well as you wanted. I think that's really cool, that like experimental learning energy, because it is very brave to just get your ass into gear and, grab life by the balls.
Like the same thing with young people, with kids. Like that's how we learn stuff, is by doing it and seeing if it works. And if we're afraid to try new things, then we're potentially losing out on things that we might really enjoy, that we might really identify with in some way, if we're just limiting ourselves to the things that we already know, that we've already done, that we've already been through. That's leaving a lot of other things on the table.
Yeah, if you're like listening to what other people have told you you are or told you to believe, then you're kind of never going to know what is actually true just for you as an individual.
And I have also seen people, give Aries energy flack for being like excitable or enthusiastic about certain things. Have you guys seen this? Like, it's, I think, also because like socially we don't really respect like children, I think that that plays a role in it because it's like to be too enthusiastic, sometimes people will be like, that's not appropriate or you seem kind of weird or crazy, and it's just like, for somebody to be passionate and directed about their energy isn't like necessarily a negative thing. And in fact, I think for the person that is experiencing it is often really positive.
Yeah, I don't know why culturally we have this kind of like aversion to people being excited for things or being passionate about stuff. It's like everybody wants to be nonchalant and being like, "Oh, nothing bothers me." But if someone is like fired up about something even in a positive or a negative way, they're like, "Oh my god, that's too much. You're too intense." Like why is that a bad thing that somebody's like living life fully with like the full range of emotions? But yeah, like people do get upset with kids when they're like being too loud or talking too much about something they're passionate about. And then if you put someone down for being passionate, that's really messed up. That can
Right.
stay with someone for a long time. Or being like bullied for having a passion or like smiling too much or like whatever. Or being like, you laugh too loud and then they're never gonna do that again. I'm like, why are we putting people down for the highs and lows of being human? Like, why do we need to just fit in this little narrow band of acceptability? It just, I feel bad for people that are larger than life that get told to shrink themselves.
I think that also kind of goes back to our cultural issue with
Mhm.
like sensitivity and being sensitive. And I don't think people often regard Aries energy as being sensitive, but it is sensitive because, if we go back to our episode about the eclipse, we talked a lot about Aries energy being kind of like this sprout that's kind of coming out of the earth and starting this new venture. That's a sensitive position to be in. And so, yeah, that Aries energy can be sensitive. And, if you shut somebody down about something that they're excited about, they might not react well to that. But it almost feels like on some level, it's like, we need to protect people from being too sensitive and like they need to toughen up and it's just not realistic. And like if you pursue things that you're passionate about, like what if it doesn't like lead anywhere? What if it's not practical? And I feel like a lot of it is just wrapped up in like everything else. Like, well, that doesn't really serve the economy. And, I don't think people are sitting around saying, like, I'm gonna, bully this person because it's bad for the economy if they're not like pursuing, they're just doing what they want instead of like being practical. I think that we end up being tools of our system, whether we intend to or not. So, something to think about because you're right. There is nothing wrong with being enthusiastic. And I think that we should actually honor people's excitement and enthusiasm a lot more because that tends to reveal who we are and what we're actually supposed to put our energy towards. Like, we're not supposed to just be miserable and suck it up and do what other people are expecting us to do all the time. Like, that's not why we're here. As much as other people might try to make us believe that. So, let's talk about Libra energy. So, Libra is, of course, an air sign. It is also a cardinal sign. So, it is one of those starters of the zodiac. It is symbolized by the scales because it has to do very much with weighing and measuring and trying to find the balance. The planet that rules Libra is Venus, and it is typically associated with the seventh house in astrology. And in terms of the human body, it is associated with the kidneys, lower back, and adrenal glands. So, what do you guys think about when you think of Libra energy?
With Libra, it's about the relationship between two people, where Aries is very self focused, Libra is kind of focused on other as well as themselves, or like they see themselves in relationship with other people. So I do see them as a very considerate, thoughtful sign.
When I think of Libra energy, I think about Libra tending to learn a lot from being in relationship to others in a variety of ways. I feel like that is a really central theme of how Libra energy tends to adjust itself. And of course, with the association with the seventh house very much has to do with partnership and contracts. Yeah, so I think of Libra as being also very cooperative, right? Because if you are contracting with anybody, you have to have some level of cooperation with them. You have some kind of an agreement of what each party that is involved in any given contract, whether it's marriage, whether it is like a literal contract, there is some coming together and finding a compromise of some kind, finding agreement of some kind. It's also a very diplomatic sign. So, it is not definitely not a sign known for enjoying conflict, I would say. And we actually have 3 Libra personal placement people here right this very moment. So we are also very well represented on this front.
That's why we all work together so well.
Right? That is another thing about Libra energy is that it tends to prefer to cooperate, to work with others. We just talked a lot about how Aries is very self-directed, but at the same time, there's benefit to cooperating with other people, coming together for a shared purpose, whatever that purpose is, whether it is a close friendship, whether it is like an actual contract, because there can be benefit for all involved parties when you do that, when you share your energy in some way. And so Libra energy is very much about finding the balance, right? Because one of the stereotypes I think with Libra energy is like codependency, right? Like needing others in certain situations, or maybe like overly relying on other people to be a barometer. That would be like a less healthy expression of it, right? But in any kind of partnership or any sort of coming together with 2 or more parties, you're going to have to find the balance in that, meaning like how much is too much?
Yeah, I do think that Libra energy has a good way of knowing their responsibility to other people and what they need to be giving in a partnership. Sometimes it can go a little too much where they're trying to overgive to like salvage the relationship almost. When I see people with Libra placements, I do like to remind them that if it's not fair to you, it's not fair to everybody. You are part of everybody, and to not only be worried about what the people around you think, because you are a party in that agreement as well. I do really appreciate that they really understand like working with other people and being courteous and considerate of another person's perspective on things.
Yeah, absolutely. That is not a skill that comes easily to everybody. To be able to like put yourself in somebody else's shoes, I think is one of the most valuable Libra qualities that a person can have, because when you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, I think you can be a lot fairer to them and hopefully find a sense of being on the same page or seeing where they're coming from. And you can see how that like that is an important part of diplomacy, like if we're talking about straight up like negotiating with somebody, it does help you even if you're just being strategic and selfish, even if you are the most selfish, to be able to see where somebody else is coming from too, because actually it's funny because the seventh house is also known enemies,
Mhm.
right? And so that I think plays into that very much, because it's like, well, if you know you have an enemy or somebody that's sitting on the opposite side of the table as you for whatever reason, certainly helps to know like what they might be thinking.
Yeah, if you know what they want, then you're able to kind of negotiate the terms of whatever so that maybe they get what they want, you get what you want, everybody wins in a way. That Libra thing with fairness, but being very important to them. and things being like equitable, and even if it's a disagreement, for somebody else to be like, okay, I'll give you what you want, so then this can end and we can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I think that that makes me think about the relationship between aesthetics and Libra energy, because if something like feels off or looks off, it's kind of disruptive to the piece in some ways, or it can be. It can be for a Libra, I'll say that. It's like, this is not pleasing to me. This is distracting. This is taking up my energy. Not about it. So I think that that understanding of, one, the way that aesthetics can shape like everybody's comfortability, I think is an asset that Libra has. Like, I think people can kind of underestimate aesthetics sometimes, and like the
Mhm.
power of
I
aesthetics.
feel like it almost boils down to like harmony. Like we need harmony and like peace and balance in like our external world to kind of like reflect our internal, because I think Lori was the one who said this, like the quickest way to figure out like if a Libra is feeling like emotionally turbulent, it'll like show in the external environment. And I very much think like that's very much like a Libra thing, where it's like the internal reflects the external and vice versa. And so if things like are not pleasing externally, like it almost affects us internally, coming from a Libra sun and Mercury. So
Yeah, I think Libra can become too dependent on outside sources, and that's where that stereotype of codependency comes in. But you can look to the other side at the Aries axis, and I see it as literally finding balance between Aries and Libra energy. But that, well, my sun is opposite my Mars in Libra and in Aries, so that explains
Right.
that. Thank you for providing that light bulb moment on this podcast, Kaycee.
No, I
Duh.
think that's totally correct though. I think that's a great example
Yeah,
though. Like,
it's you.
it is a
Yeah,
polarity. It is a polarity. And that's
true.
part of that balance, is like, I think it's also, it's self versus other, but it's also internal versus external, which is kind of almost the same thing in a different way.
Yeah, and that reflects the environment thing Mackenzie just said.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's like, how good can I really be feeling if the house is a mess? There's that imbalance revealing itself in a certain way. The other thing that I like to talk about with Libra energy, because I do feel like, especially in pop astrology, it gets kind of like overlooked a little bit, is the relationship between justice and Libra energy. Because I don't know if you've ever seen like a pissed off Libra. Listeners, we have. Maybe you have too. But when things reach a certain point and the harmony is that disrupted, that is, I think, where the kind of warrior side of Libra energy can come out, because it's like something is really wrong here, and therefore that pleasantness, that diplomacy has failed at that point, right? It's like we are too far past that situation. And that is where it's like, okay, gloves come off. And Libra won't be so, polite and soft anymore.
Truly can be scary, like just truly unhinged energy if there is an imbalance that has not been able to be resolved through diplomacy and like trying to see someone else's perspective. If it's been pushed too far and it's affecting other people, they're gonna go full like warrior mode and neutralize the threat to the group.
I think Libra will do their best. At least, well, it plays out differently for everyone's Libra energy, whatever it may be. But I think they'll hold the harmony or try to strive for that harmony. But it gets to a certain point where it's like, okay, enough is enough, and that's when that sense of justice kicks in because, like you said, when something affects other people, that's when that's how you piss off a Libra. That's how you do it.
period.
Yeah, I think in some senses Libras are more okay with like taking on the consequences themselves, but once it starts to affect the other people around them, that they care about. They're like, okay, enough is enough. Like, I've been bending to this other person's will for long enough, and something's got to change because this isn't okay. It's not just affecting me. Because I feel, like I said earlier, in a lot of cases with Libras, I noticed that they're able to take discomfort to such a level that, they wouldn't think is acceptable for somebody else. But they're, willing to give and give to like make the situation or relationship with another person work. But once it like passes a certain point, whatever like line in the sand that they have drawn, then it's gloves off. They're not going to care about hurting your feelings anymore. And that can be like a really big change in energy. It's like you just see that other side flip, and it can be truly frightening.
And I think that partly is because, like, we will tend to, oh, it's okay, that they didn't mean it like that. And, we'll make all these compromises and compromises. There comes a point, though, where you realize that it's gone too far. And usually the resentment by then has built up quietly. So then by the time that it's like too far, it's just like that's it, it can go really extreme in that sense.
It's almost like we're putting ourselves in the other person's shoes above our own. And so that's where we can take a note from Aries.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that. Of course, Aries and Libra are opposite signs. They are sister signs. Those words mean the same thing. So, we talk about sister signs and they can learn a lot from each other. So, in this case, yeah, Libra energy can really benefit from seeing everyone involved as individuals, including and maybe especially themselves. Because, especially, I think, with people that are socialized as girls or women, there is a lot of deference, like refer to other people and be very pleasant and make space for other people and, you know, be nice. Just be nice. Don't be rude. That's actually my favorite. One of my favorite Libra moments. I'm not a Kardashian person. One of the things that I think of when I think of Libra energy is Kim Kardashian beating the shit out of her sister with a purse and saying, "Don't be rude." That is what I think about when I think of Libra energy.
Honestly, an iconic moment.
That's like the perfect.
Don't be fucking rude. Yeah.
That's me every day. Every day in my head. Don't be fucking rude.
For real, though.
But I think for me as like a Libra Venus, it was a real learning curve for me to get to a point where, especially in my close relationships, where I wasn't just overly deferring to what the other person needed. It was like I neglected a lot about my own needs for a very long time just because that was how I was sort of socialized. And I don't think anyone sat down and was like, let's ruin Kaycee. But it was something that I really had to like work my way out of because it was just very natural to me. And so with that Aries energy, like understanding, yeah, you can be in partnership all you want, but no matter what partnership you're in, you're going to be individuals. You're going to be operating as separate entities. And if it isn't fair to you, it really isn't fair at all. So, advocating for yourself, I think, is a really important thing that Libra energy can take a note out of the Aries book for.
Yeah, man.
What about Aries energy with regards to Libra? I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is that we have goals and things that we're striving towards, but oftentimes we can find that the things that we want to do either can't be done alone or they benefit from having somebody else in the mix in some way. So once you introduce another person, then you start needing those Libra skills of cooperation, communication, things that maybe aren't the default setting for Aries energy.
Yeah, and then you have to work with another person's schedule, another person's like energy, of how much they're able to give, and learning how to be like, you can't always have it right now immediately when you want to do it if you're working with other people.
Yeah, definitely some patience comes in handy, I think, there. And Libra energy does tend to, I think, be a lot more patient than Aries energy, sometimes to its own detriment.
Something that I think Libras can learn from Aries is, there's that stereotype that Libras can never make a decision. And what we're really doing is just, weighing our options. We're like, okay, if I do this, then this will happen. Or if I do this, that'll like cut off that pathway. And like, we often become like severely overthinking that we end up like not doing anything. And so even doing that is a choice. And so that's something that I've had to learn. And so I've been actually learning from my sister sign Aries to just do the damn thing, just do something and just make a decision. And if it's not like what I want to do later on, then I can change paths, I can change courses. It's been like a huge learning experience for me. And so when I started learning about astrology and like learning about sister signs, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can learn from Aries, But yeah, so that's definitely something because it is real. That Libra indecision, constant weighing and measuring.
Like, it's kind of cool because you can see, like, a Libra can really see the benefits of like every single separate decision, and that
Mhm.
can be a lot to be like, which is the best one. Like, they all have good things about them, and if I do this, then I'll
Mhm.
miss out on something from this. But
It's exhausting.
Yes.
then if you're not doing anything, you miss out on it all. So
It's about finding the balance.
Oh,
Maybe thinking about stuff a little bit and taking action that is aligned with who you are. Is it possible?
we can get there. Yeah.
We can get there together.
Right? Tune in next week.
we'll find out.
I feel like another thing I've learned from Aries as a Libra is I used to be like a chronic people pleaser just because, we're putting ourselves in other people's shoes constantly and almost like viewing ourselves through the eyes of other people. And so it's just kind of like been a slow unpacking of that, of like no longer people pleasing and like figuring out like who I am. Cause this is like my own personal experience. I used to kind of like lose myself in relationships, just kind of like trying to like make that other person happy. And so being like by myself for a while, which is like being single and like figuring out who I am, I think that's been like a really important part of like my own Libra journey. No longer like doing things for other people, but doing things for me and learning from Aries in that respect. Like learning that it's okay to be selfish and like it's okay to understand yourself through like your own experience. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but
That made me think about when we are embodying that Aries energy and being authentic to ourselves, then when we lean into that Libra energy, we are going to attract people that
mm-hmm.
are better suited to
Yep.
us when we're actually being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't going to have to make it fit. That's the real thing. So these energies can work really beautifully together if you're talking about people that are being authentic to themselves, coming together for any purpose.
Agreed.
Let's talk about some well known people that have prominent Aries energy. In terms of astrologers, I always think of Rick Levine because he has like a ton of Aries energy.
When he calls himself the Aquariarian, which I find
Very
so
Aries.
funny.
Oh, so Aries. So
He's like, I'm
Aries.
gonna make my own word
Right.
about myself.
I think a lot of his Aries is in the
Mm-hmm.
11th house. Is that what it is? I think that's why
Yep.
he says that. Some prominent people with Aries energy, we've got Russell Brand is an Aries moon and Mars in terms of personal placements.
He's a very outspoken guy.
Okay, another person that really comes to mind for me with Aries energy, Rihanna. And before you correct me, that is actually how you say her name. Most people say it wrong, which is kind of wild for especially for an Aries. Like I wonder if that just like pisses her off that people don't actually say her name properly. She has an Aries Venus and is potentially an Aries rising. I really think she has that Aries quality to her. Very unapologetic, very like I'm here, you want me or don't, fuck off. That's kind of the vibe that I get from her.
Well, and she just is who she is, which I love.
Yeah, she's not like any other bitch out here. You know, she's doing her
Mm-hmm.
thing and she doesn't care, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Tupac was a Aries moon.
R.I.P.
And then we have Bill Gates is actually an Aries moon as well. Interestingly, he is also a Libra Mars and Mercury. So he's got both hanging out there. Whitney Houston, Aries moon, actually conjunct Jupiter as well. And she's a Libra Mars. Marilyn Monroe, Aries Venus. Also Lady Gaga,
Yoga.
Gaga.
Aries Venus. So was Albert Einstein, Aries Venus.
All very passionate.
And Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey also feels very Aries to me. She is an Aries sun and Venus, and she's got her Mars there as well.
Those are all people that are really known for their individual actions and what they have accomplished themselves. Or like they're doing something differently. I think all of them have their own like special something that people appreciate about them.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Aries Mercury, we've got heavy hitter Adolf Hitler.
Oh God.
He was a cat moon, so don't be mad. He was a Libra rising as well, so something to think about. I'm gonna get in trouble. Albert Einstein was also an Aries Mercury. Leonardo da Vinci was an Aries Mercury. Elizabeth II, R.I.P.
R.I.P. to a real one.
Aries Mercury. Mark Zuckerberg. Also, Vincent van Gogh was an Aries Mercury. A lot of artists.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a certain something to be able to create something that's different and that kind of hasn't been seen before. I think all of them, they have notable ideas and they've been pioneers in their field, for better or for worse.
Charlie Chaplin was a Aries Sun and Mercury as well. Libra Mercuries, we got Beyonce. Heavy hitter.
Slay.
We also have Leonardo DiCaprio and Vladimir Putin. Kristen Stewart is a Libra moon. Jay-Z is a Libra moon. Nikola Tesla, Libra moon.
That's a true bad bitch right there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Libra Venuses, we have Beyonce, Freddie Mercury, Ryan Gosling,
Queens.
Grace Kelly, Will Smith. Speaking of Will Smith, I mean, just the freshest news that I have from him is him slapping the shit out of somebody at the Oscars. So for a Libra Venus to slap the shit out of somebody in public, he was probably really upset.
Yeah, it was like his partner was getting insulted. So I see a lot of Libra energy is more willing to stick up for other people than themselves, or they're more willing to go out and like correct something, an injustice or something that they see happening, if it's about someone else they care about. Then so if someone has a Libra bestie, like don't mess with them because they have like a guard dog on call pretty much.
It's the truth.
Don't do it. Also, we've got Woody Allen, who's a Libra Venus. Stephen King, Bernie Sanders, Jada Pinkett Smith, also Libra Venus.
Judge Judy has quite a few Libra placements.
She does. She is a Libra Sun as well. Libra Mars, we have Eminem, also Elvis Presley, and Freddie Mercury was also a Libra Mars. John Lennon. Bill Clinton is a Libra Mars and Venus. Sigmund Freud was a Libra Mars and an Aries Venus. Steve Jobs was an Aries Mars.
Very pioneering.
I know that he got in trouble for being angry in the workplace or having strong opinions. He got ousted before for that.
I mean, and he was kind of a weird guy too, from what I know. He was very self-directed, from what I understand. Prince was a 0-degree Aries Mars.
That's intense.
As is Jared Leto, which is interesting. As is Emma Stone. So was Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer was a Aries moon and Mars and a Libra rising, and he certainly was very self-directed.
You know where he lived, right?
Ohio.
Right up the
I
street.
Oh no.
Uh-huh.
That's your boy.
That's my soul sister.
That's your soul sister. Tyra Banks is a really great, I think, Aries Mars example. Because Tyra is just Tyra. Like, she just is. Oh, she's an Aries moon, too. Bernie Sanders is an Aries Mars. It's fascinating that a lot of these people that we're seeing have both Aries and Libra energy. These prominent people that, when we read these names, these are just people that they're not more special than anybody listening to this. These are just the people whose charts that we have and that, we have a kind of cultural understanding of. But it is fascinating that a lot of people that have been able to achieve a lot of social success do have both that Aries energy and the Libra energy. They can be very self-directed, very passionate, but also know how to work with other people when they need to. So that's a really interesting observation. Stephen Hawking, Aries Mars, and a Libra rising. So that's on Aries and Libra. So we'll continue this series again next month. We'll be talking about Taurus and Scorpio polarity. So we will see you back again for that.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. So if you didn't get a chance to set intentions for the eclipse that we had on April 8th, you still have a chance to do that today if you can. We are still in the new moon phase, and therefore it is seed planting time. But I have even better news. So the day that this podcast comes out is April 10th, and at 1:36 p.m. on the 10th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So all of those intentions that you've been setting, this is a great time to actually take some action on them. If you've been looking to start meditation practice or any other kind of spiritual practice, I would say this energy is extra delightful for that. If you've been looking to be more creative, to go with the flow a little bit more, maybe try some intuitive art of some kind, this would be a great time to try that out. With this energy, you're really going to want to feel into what you're drawn to do. It's not so much a thinky energy, it's more of a feel and do energy. Not that you can't think, and of course, we're always going to use common sense, but if there's something that pops into your head today or the next couple of days, and you're like, that's a little weird, that's a little left field, but it does sound good, listen to that. And that is part of what I was talking about in the beginning, trusting yourself, owning who you are, hearing those impulses, not being your own impressor by changing that little voice into your head into a cop. Kill the cop in your head. This is about trusting your inner guidance, checking in with yourself, developing a sense of trust in yourself. If you've been thinking about taking action and getting more involved in your local community, more collective action, this is a great time for that as well. And, it's not all going to be done overnight, It's not about doing things perfectly or quickly. This is about incorporating more long-term practices, the things that we return to day in and day out, that we build forward with. So if you have more long-term aspirations, it might be that some of the impulses and the little nudges that you get from yourself or the universe, your guidance, whatever it is that you believe in and work with, a lot of times those little kind of quiet nudges are actually a lot more significant than we give them credit for. So if you are feeling that over the next couple of days, not only do I want you to try to take action on it, but I also want you to think about, what is this little nudge telling me about myself overall, about who I am at my core? Is it telling me that I need more dedicated spiritual time in my day-to-day life to grow, to become the person that I want to be more compassionate, more involved in the world? Because as you guys know, I encourage people to get more involved, to be more connected all the time, because I think it is really the only way forward. But if we don't check in with ourselves, if we don't nourish ourselves, if we don't take care of ourselves on a spiritual level, we're going to get depleted. We're going to get burnt out. We're going to get fried. We're going to get alienated from other people. That's the opposite of what we need and want. And when we get to know ourselves better, when we trust ourselves more, when we have more respect for ourselves, it enables us to be of more service to other people. It enables us to be in connection with other people to a greater degree. And that's very on point for this episode with the Aries and the Libra energy. If we don't take care of ourselves, we don't understand ourselves as individuals with needs, we're not going to be very useful to ourselves or anyone else. And the fact, the more that we take care of our needs, our consciousness, connect to our spirituality, make space for it, prioritize it, allow ourselves to be the creative beings that we are here to be, the better it is for the collective. The less pissed off people we have running around and fucking other people's shit up. And spirituality, creativity, none of that shit has to be hard. We always think that meditation means we have to clear out every thought in our head and we have to sit silently and, be reverent and be perfect. And if you're like me and you came from a Christian background, I'm pointing at that stuff to say that's influencing that line of thinking. You do not need to be perfect in the eyes of the universe to participate, to contribute, and to make things better. But you do need to make space for yourself. So with this Mars conjunct Saturn energy, I would really love for you to make some time for yourself to get in touch with what it is you want to take action on next. This is take action energy, but action that you're connected to on a soul level. This is big picture stuff, so take advantage of it. The rest of the week, there are a lot of opportunities for people to be emotional or easily triggered. So keep that in mind as you operate through this week. Make sure that if you are feeling things on an emotional level, that you're making space for it, you're not shutting it down, you're not shoving it away. That doesn't really help us. But being conscious of it, being aware of your own energy and what your body is asking for, what your spirit is asking for. Ultimately, that is going to make it easier for you to show up more authentically and get the things that you want to get done. Take the action that you want to take. So be sensitive to yourself, be sensitive to others, and just remember, we can only control ourselves. We can only do what we can do, and we can only take things one day at a time, and that's gonna have to be okay. Before we go, I just want to remind listeners that Petty Astrology has a free community that you can join over on Patreon. And in fact, this weekend, Saturday, April 13th, I'm going to be hosting a Q&A session, a live stream over on Patreon. We're going to be answering your questions and talking more about the astrology of Quiet on Set. So we'd love to have you join in on the conversation, so you can head over to the link in the show notes for that. This episode was produced by Lori Rivers and brought to you by my sponsors over on Patreon.